Welcome to another edition of the DLF Dynasty podcast. I'm Dan Myler with Ryan McDowell and Matt Price. Fellas, how we doing this fine week, Matt?
I'm doing great, man. It's we got a startup auction going. We're having a blast with that. Very creative leave, Dan. So thanks for putting that together. I got a birthday weekend coming up. Going to go up in the mountains and just kind of get away from stuff. We'll see how that coincides with the startup auction and how much I can pay attention to that for those couple days. But yeah, life's good, man.
Yeah, life's real good. I'm a Milwaukee Bucks fan, so life's real good. Bucks and 6, baby. That was so much fun. Nothing can ruin this mood for me. Ryan, how about you? How you doing, bud?
That means you're a Packers fan, also, though. Yeah. So
thanks.
We'll see.
Nothing can rain on this parade.
You know, highs and lows are going to kind of be the theme of our show today. So that's
done.
That's a perfect start. Perfect start.
Nice segue for sure. We are going to do highs and lows, a little bit of a high risk, high reward. The players that we think can blow up and take off for your fantasy team, or could blow up in your face and suddenly you got egg on it. So that's the idea this week. We're all going to present at least a couple players that we think present that big reward, that opportunity for that, but also quite a bit of risk. So let's jump right into it, guys. There's lots of news, I would say. You know, training camp's just a handful of days away now. We're inching closer anyway, and there's little tidbits popping up here and there. So the first guy I want to really mention, and I'm going to cheat just a little bit, guys, and pick two players, and they come from, Matt, our favorite team. It's Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. It's probably taking the easy way out, because when you think high risk, high reward, well, the biggest risk is your guy not being available, not coming out and showing up on the field. And while Rodgers is sitting down in the quarterback 2 range of our ADP at quarterback 14 and 112 overall, his value, Ryan, completely is attached to all the other playmakers there in Green Bay. I think it's fair to say that most dynasty managers are looking at that roster saying, wow, that's big reward if Rodgers is there, but maybe a lot of risk if he's not.
Yeah, certainly. And we'll talk about a couple players kind of in this situation where if we know the player is going to be on the field, there really is no risk, right? I mean, Rodgers is quarterback 14 in our ADP. If he plays this year, and really if he plays for the Packers this year, there's no risk in that value range or choosing him in that spot. But that's really the unknown, and you're totally right, because of the position he plays and the importance of him specifically on that team. I mean, it affects Davante Adams and everybody else. And, you know, we've talked so long about the Packers not having a wide receiver 2 or not really using their tight end effectively. Even with those things kind of in the back of my mind, I still look at most of these other teams that are being rumored as possible destinations and think that would probably be a downgrade. So if there is ultimately a trade of Rodgers to one of these other teams, I don't know that that's such a good thing for him. So yeah, certainly a lot of risk, and that he may not even, you know, be on the field. He might be hosting Jeopardy, and the obvious reward of potentially another quarterback 1 season overall.
Yeah, quarterback 1 overall. So that's the big high reward. The risk you outlined perfectly. What I want to talk to you, Matt, about is all those other options on the team, all the other position players, really, mainly Davante Adams. And there was news coming into the weekend that now Adams has broke off discussions with the Packers, and the Packers didn't offer him wide receiver 1 overall type money in a new contract extension. There's a lot of whispers and there's a lot of talk surrounding the Green Bay Packers, and maybe it surrounds more of those players and more pieces of that offense. But specifically with Adams, you're kind of rocking a hard place. He's in his late 20s now, coming off that magical season in 2020, tied to Aaron Rodgers. So on top of the Rodgers drama that's happening and the unknowns there, we also have the long-term unknowns with Davante Adams. So he presents maybe a little bit different, but certainly a high risk, high reward type of situation for Davante.
Yeah, I mean, he prevents a high risk reward situation, I think, in multiple aspects, whether we're talking about on the field production. Clearly, he's going to take a downtick with Jordan Love. I mean, I don't think we're at risk of Davante Adams not playing in 2021. I think we can take that risk probably off the table. But with Jordan Love, who knows what we get there? I don't know. I think I'm the least excited about seeing what Jordan Love can do for the Packers. So with him, I think he's going to be fine because he'll be a target hog. So he's going to get the volume. So he's probably going to be fine. Although, I don't think we're going to necessarily get a wide receiver 1 overall kind of season with that combination. And then from a Dynasty's perspective, I mean, he's a risk already anyway, because he's, 28 years old, 29 soon, I think, somewhere middle of the season or towards the end of the season. And then you have a risk of that value just plummeting. We've talked about what's happened to Julio Jones' value over the last couple of years. We've talked about how DeAndre Hopkins seems to be on a similar path, a top 5-ish wide receiver in ADP last season, down to 10 this year, and probably closer to 20 like Julio is facing right now. Right. So lots of risks there. I think the reward is obviously still there too. This could all be like we were talking about before, Dan, before recording, that this is maybe all overblown and everything's going to be fine once we get to week 1. Maybe we have to stress out all the way until week 1. So the reward aspect is certainly there, but the risk at this point, I think, for both players are probably ones I'm not going to take on if I'm in a startup draft.
It feels to me, guys, like this dark cloud is going to loom over Green Bay into the season. Even if Rodgers does return, even if Adams and Aaron are on the field together, I don't know that Aaron Rodgers is the kind of guy that just buries the hatchet and let's go play for the next 2 or 3 years. I think this, even if he returns and he's on the field, there's going to be answers that are going to be needed to be given at some point, and that might not even come till the following offseason. So I guess the last thing we need to do before moving on to the next player or even group of players, since I cheated, guys, is decide, are we willing to take the risk for the reward? Ryan, are these guys that you're willing to invest in at their current price?
I would invest in Aaron Rodgers. I'm still, I won't pretend to know what's going to happen or really to have any idea what team he plays for in 2021. But I do think he will play. He will be on the field for some team. And we talked about that quarterback 14 price. The cost in trade is certainly not outrageous for Rodgers, especially in 1 quarterback leagues. So I'd be investing in Rodgers, but not Adams. Matt talked about the age. He's still top 5, top 6 wide receiver in our ADP, and I would just choose a younger option at that point.
And if you're going to sell Adams, you might wait until the day Aaron Rodgers pops into camp and he's throwing passes to him. That might be the time to do that. Matt, how about you? Are you buying or selling with these guys?
I mean, if I have them, I'm probably not selling. I just don't think you're going to get the value. So I'm going to hold and count on some kind of production from that standpoint. But in a new startup draft, I'm not probably touching either of these guys. And you mentioned quarterback 14 for Rodgers. That's in the 1 quarterback format. And Superflex last month, he was actually quarterback 11, in the early 3rd round into the 2nd round. And there's just too many other good players in that range that I'm willing to risk on that. We saw last season with probably I would say, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he could have a better season than last season. I'm not sure, but that touchdown rate was certainly unsustainable over the next few seasons. And, even with that, even with leading the league in a lot of stat categories, he still couldn't get to quarterback 1 overall because he just doesn't provide that rushing floor for us. Now, if you're going to get him for a quarterback 2 price and count on top 10 production from that standpoint, even in a quote unquote down year, if he has one of those, then that's fine. But in terms of a quarterback 1, like there's no way I'm paying those prices, even at quarterback 11, 12 in that range, just because he's not going to offer you that same upside that you could get by just paying a little bit more for a quarterback that can do some stuff with his legs.
Sure. I'm kind of with Ryan here. I'm willing to pay for Rodgers. I'm willing to add him on a dynasty roster if somebody's going to give any kind of discount because of all the question marks surrounding him or because of his age. But when it comes to Adams, and I have him on a lot of teams, I'd be looking for the right deal to get out if it did present itself. Matt, there's another player that's been in the news over the last week or so that we definitely need to talk about, and it fits perfectly into our high risk, high reward theme.
Yeah, this is a really sad one. It's just a bummer. Like Cam Akers, 22 years old, and his career is potentially over. I think there's a lot of optimism surrounding him right now, but we have seen exactly 0 running backs come back and be successful after an Achilles injury. So Marlon Mack is going to be maybe the closest test, at least in recent memory, this season, if he gets an opportunity to get on the field behind Jonathan Taylor. And maybe youth and medical advancement in science is going to change that for him, but I just don't know. I just don't think that he's somebody I'm going to be invested, especially currently right now at running back 8 prices overall in the first round in 1 quarterback leagues, or near the first round in 1 quarterback leagues. So that's obviously going to fall. But the flip side of that is Darrell Henderson, right? Can he be a legitimate running back 2 for us? Like with running back 1 weeks, it's tough to invest in the price that I think it is, and we don't have new ADP on these guys yet. But if I'm going to take a guess on it, I'm going to say he's going to start going in the 4th, 5th round, somewhere like that, in 1 quarterback leagues, maybe the 6th, 7th in super flex leagues. And I just don't know. Like he's kind of in the same bucket as guys like Myles Gaskin, Mike Davis, guys that we think are probably going to be productive this year. But the risk for him is that he has 1 good season and then he goes either back to the bench or just go back to like a kind of a reduced role. And that could even happen before this podcast gets released. Honestly, if one of these free agents happen, if one of the Melvin Gordon rumors works out and he comes over, if one of the Tampa Bay Bucs running backs ended up over here, there's the chance that by the time even this is released, that the price you've paid for Henderson is too much. That said, if I am going to be in on Henderson, then I'm going to pay a 2nd round pick, and I'm not sure there's too many of those options right now. And I don't really want to sell him if I'm a contender, I don't really want to sell him for anything less than like a late 1st round pick. I'm not sure how many of those deals are out there either. So you might be stuck with those guys. And in terms of Akers, I think I'm just not going to buy it all at whatever the price is. I mean, if I can get him for a 2nd round pick, maybe, but I'm not paying any 1st round picks for Akers at this point.
That's pretty much where I am with both of those guys, Matt. Akers, I would be selling, would sell for any 1st round.
Any first.
And as far as Henderson goes, I mean, I like the player. I've got him on a few of my teams already, but when it comes to trade value right now, which is really what people want to know, because this guy landed on your roster a couple of years ago in the 2nd round of a rookie draft, or you grabbed him late in a startup or whatever, and now you feel like you've struck gold. I agree. I would not sell him for a 2nd. The upside, just the unknown is too high there. But I've seen people paying 1st, which I think is crazy. I would not give a 1st rounder for him at all. So for me, he's just one of those players right now that's kind of in no man's land when it comes to trades. I don't think I would even take 2 2nd rounders for him. So there's, there's a middle ground there somewhere. I just don't know where it is yet.
Even if it's an unattractive running back, like let's say Todd Gurley comes back because he knows the system and all that stuff, like he's going to take touches away from Henderson, right? So I don't know. It's really weird. It's almost like, I think with both of these players, I'm selling for any 1st and buying for probably any contender. I'm probably buying for any 2nd.
Henderson's a really interesting case study because he was there first, right? We saw him for a year before Akers was brought in, but Gurley was having that last run with the Rams that year. Henderson rarely got on the field. I think he missed some games even, but he only averaged 3.8 yards per carry on limited attempts and really wasn't that big of an impact player. Didn't make many big plays. Then we all forgot about him a little bit when they picked Akers. They moved on, of course, from Gurley, picked Akers, and everybody thought, well, Henderson must not be that good if they're willing to spend that high 2nd round, but their first pick in that draft, spend it on Akers and make him the guy after letting Gurley go. So he's gone, or he shouldn't be forgotten is the point here. You know, he really didn't get a good run in his first year. He played limited snaps really in his second year because Akers is so good. On 138 attempts, he averaged 4.5 yards per carry. So significantly better in his second year. I think there's a lot of upside when it comes to Henderson. And just because Akers was selected so highly doesn't mean that the Rams don't think they have something in Henderson and don't think that they can give him the ball and really feature him in the offense. So I'm closer to buying than I am selling. But you guys mentioned, Ryan, you put it perfectly. There's a middle ground. We don't know exactly where it is, and we need to find that probably before the season starts, especially if you've been holding on to Henderson for 2 years after picking him in a rookie draft a couple of years ago and kind of wasting a roster spot. You need to find the opportune time to move on, or if you're in the right situation, capitalize, use him for this season, put him in your lineup and reap the reward, really.
And we have to remember, if you drafted Darrell Henderson during your rookie draft, like you might have been paying like the 106. Remember, the hype got crazy on Darrell Henderson for a while,
especially late in the offseason.
Yeah, and if you have a chance now, 2 years later, to recoup that first round pick, I just think you have to do that.
I think you're right. I think you are, but there are situations, right, Matt? We gotta, if we're contenders and we're looking at especially in a league that requires multiple running backs in your starting lineup, that you can add flexes, that you're 10 deep in your starting lineup. You have to give your roster a really firm look, decide if you're truly a contender, because Henderson could be one of those guys that comes from nowhere and wins people titles.
I agree with you. I'm so worried that someone else is coming in is it's gonna ruin that. But I do have him in a certain vampire league, and I'm excited to have him there.
Well, for the purpose of making a decision, and Matt, you said we don't have updated ADP on these guys yet. I would expect the price to be somewhere around that running back dead zone that we've talked about on here, which is the late RB2s, high-end RB3s. We're talking David Montgomery, Trey Sermon, Kareem Hunt, Chris Carson. Those guys are going anywhere from mid-third round to late fifth round. That's where I think he settles. So if that's the ADP, if the cost is a late first rounder to buy, do we see the risk, or are we on the risk or the reward side here?
I want all of those guys over him though, because they have, I mean, I don't know. Maybe can we consider that Henderson has a locked in top role? I don't know. Even David Montgomery, I want over him.
That's where the risk is. You're teeter-tottering on that risk reward, right?
I'm out. I'm not taking him. I'm out.
You're
Same.
out.
I
think I might be in. I love that Rams offense. I love the coaching staff. I love that Stafford is there now, and I know he doesn't check down quite as much as some other quarterbacks and all that whole narrative. But man, I can just see it happening for Henderson in year 3.
Well, that's the other thing I wanted to bring up.
I want him over Chris Carson, guys. I want the upside of the blow-up season over a guy like Chris Carson. And when
Stafford was traded to the Rams, there was a brief stint where the community was worried about Cam Akers because Stafford, hasn't been good for running backs is the story. And part of that is the Lions have been terrible at finding running backs. The Mikel LaShore had the same injury that Cam Akers now has. So
wait a minute. Did you just say it's Stafford's fault?
I think it might be. I see a connection here. No, but if there's any truth to that, and I don't really think there is, but if we're worried about what Stafford was going to do to Cam Akers, then we should certainly be worried about what he's going to do to a lesser talent in Darrell Henderson.
Yeah, all they're going to do is bring in one of them vets, one of those names that Matt brought up. Maybe they find somebody that Tampa Bay casts off or something like that, or one of those teams. I'm just not that. I think it's Henderson's. He gets the first, second, and third shot, and I think he's going to run with it. I'm okay investing if those are the prices.
You would pay a late first for him in trade?
No, I wouldn't. I would pay like the 202, 203 right in there. Oh man, I'm trying to ride the fence a little bit here, Ryan.
Okay, Darrell Henderson or Michael Carter? If you've got a late rookie draft,
Carter.
No, I'm on Henderson, I think.
I want Henderson over Carter.
I'll take Henderson for sure.
So yeah, that probably is 202. Maybe a little higher. Maybe that is late first.
All right, Ryan, you have a slam dunk, high risk, high reward guy as well. In fact, he's the name if you're not thinking about like odd issues or maybe unique issues that are going on, the Aaron Rodgers saga, the Akers random injury in the off season. There is one high risk, high reward player out there that really, really glows and shines as could carry you to a championship and could blow up in your face.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about this player all off season, and really this is where this topic for our show came from, because I just can't decide what's going to happen with Jalen Hurts.
I'm hoping one of you guys can talk me into which side to be in.
I don't know. So I was going to say the same. We did our 2022 Superflex draft a couple episodes ago. I believe we did 3 rounds, and quarterbacks were flying off the board. We drafted, I think, 10 quarterbacks in the first round, 9 or 10. And we didn't draft Jalen Hurts in any of those 3 rounds. And I said on that show, a year from now, we could look like fools. And what I told you guys off the air.
Thanks for bringing that up again, right?
Hey, I'm with you. I'm in the group as well. What I told you guys before we started was, if you tell me the story that Hurts has a breakout year and he continues where he left off last year in that 3-game stretch where he averaged over 30 fantasy points per game, and he's a top 5 dynasty quarterback, like, I would just shake my head and believe that's plausible to me. But then you factor in his accuracy issues and just his skills as a passer in general, the limited weapons and unproven weapons they have in Philadelphia, the Deshaun Watson trade rumors that are popping up over the past few days. And obviously those are all negatives for Hurts. So I would believe a story telling me that he gets benched and never starts another NFL game again. Like, that's also an option. I don't know what to do with Hurts, but the price is tough to pay. He's quarterback 12, so he's being drafted as a quarterback 1 already. And looking at some of the names behind him, including Aaron Rodgers, who we already talked about, it's just tough for me to pay that price. The trade value in Superflex leagues is tough as well. Ultimately, I think I'm just staying away because I really don't know what to do. And honestly, I don't trust that Philadelphia offense at all.
Good points, Matt.
I'm going to disagree. I think that his price is kind of right. I think it's not. I think the risk of him not starting is a little bit baked in. I know he's a quarterback 1 by definition, a quarterback 12, but the guys coming in after him, it's not like. I mean, I'm not that excited. I think people are really excited by Ryan Tannehill this year, but he's got 10 years on Ryan Tannehill. A guy we're going to talk about later is on this list and certainly has a lot more risk than him, I think, right now. Rodgers is old. Stafford is, not necessarily old, but feels old. I think Tua probably has an argument to be ahead of him, or at least in the same range of him, but he's all the way down at quarterback 17. Baker Mayfield, who we think is probably solid, at least in terms of his starting role, but certainly doesn't have the upside, I think, of Hurts. So I think if we knew for a fact that Hurts was going to be the starter long term for Philly, I think he would be up in that quarterback 5, 6, 7, 8 range. Maybe behind Lawrence, ahead of Russell Wilson, maybe just behind Joe Burrow. Those guys maybe just ahead of the rookies. I'm not sure, but I just think that the upside is not necessarily baked in, but the risk is baked into that price tag when you look at those older players that are coming after him, and they've invested in the offense with bringing in Davante Smith. Say whatever you want about him, but obviously a very good receiver in college, and they brought in another weapon for him. They invested in another guy last year that didn't really work out, at least in his rookie season, in Jalen Reagor, but we still like him as a talent. So I don't know. They seem to be a team that likes to keep the offensive line fairly healthy, or maybe not healthy, but fairly robust, I would say. So if he performs well this year, then I think he's going to be the guy, because you have that quarterback on a rookie salary, and that's the cheat code in the NFL these days.
It is the cheat code, and I completely agree with everything you said, but I continue to feel in the back of my head like, oh, maybe not. He had the run and things worked out, and he was running around like like he was on fire in that backfield at times. That offensive line was Swiss cheese at best,
Injuries,
really.
Though.
Yeah. I think, we all as fantasy players, we fall in love with that rushing quarterback, that guy that can provide not only the floor that the rushing provides, but also that upside, the big reward, the potential. And Hurts just bleeds that through and through. I remember a year and a half ago, we were on this podcast, guys, talking about Jalen Hurts and how he had this upside, but it was so raw. And there were so many, maybe not red flags, but pink flags, things that make us think, maybe that doesn't look like an NFL quarterback. And your mind just doesn't change on those things like that in 4 starts or 5 starts or whatever he had. So, I'm a little bit concerned that we were smitten. We fell in love too fast on Jalen Hurts. And Ryan, your final point that you made rings through and through, that trusting that Eagles franchise right now, that front office, that ownership group, all those things, that is a risky proposition. So I lean towards the high risk as well. I'm not willing to buy. Now, if you had him, if you got him for cheap in a super flex or even a 1 quarterback league, and you're willing to roll the dice and see what happens, that high end quarterback 1 upside certainly is there.
Yeah, I mean, he's really the kind of the theme of the show for me, because I really could see it going either way. But as I said, ultimately I'm staying away because the price is already too high. We saw him for 3 games, 3 honestly elite games, but I definitely don't expect that to continue or really anything close to it. Matt, I get your point that most of the guys behind him are those older quarterbacks, but I mean, he could easily, he could give us 6 more starts and that's it. Right. Or if they trade for Deshaun Watson, he gives us 1 year and then Watson's the guy, or maybe less than that. I don't know.
I just think
there's an easy story to tell that Tannehill or Stafford or Matt Ryan or Aaron Rodgers all play much longer than Jalen Hurts from here on.
I think all those things could happen. I just think that the price right now, especially in a 1 quarterback league where it's so hard to find a difference maker at the quarterback position, he's literally the last one you're going to find that provides any rushing. He's the cheapest one that provides any rushing upside. The rest of the guys are all in the top 10. I guess I don't know how his value is necessarily when you compare him to the rookie guys, Trey Lance and Justin Fields. I think they're probably more expensive than he is. But if not, he's right in that range as the last guy that you can really get, I think, with some real rushing production.
Yeah, that's what makes him scary. That's what makes him the highlight of the show, really, the high risk, high reward player, is that reward is super high. And the risk, I believe, Ryan, I think there's a chance that he disappears faster than he appeared, really, which is a scary proposition when you're talking about what we have to invest in a player at this point in the process. Let's jump back. Let's try to get through a few more players, guys. Another player that I wanted to bring up in this whole situation is Irv Smith Jr. Now, right now, he's just outside the tight end 1s. He's at tight end 13 in our most recent DLF ADP, 131 overall. So the investment still isn't that large. But if you're I think most of us, all 3 of us probably, you like to wait on the tight end, right? We try to throw a bunch of darts at the dartboard in those middle to late rounds and try to cash in. And I think Irv Smith, he's been a target of mine for the last couple of years, a guy that I think has that kind of upside to take a leap. We're going into year 3 now, the year that we see tight ends typically make that jump. And now with Rudolph gone, his opportunity should be great. He should be on the field all the time. He should certainly be on the field for all those passing sets. And he should be a bigger red zone threat than he even has been the last couple of years. Now, over those 2 seasons, guys, he has 66 catches. he's caught 7 touchdowns and he's certainly flashed. I can remember a goal line play, the one-handed catch, leaping over the defender. Those are the kind of things that we think of when we think of his upside. In an offense already including an elite running back and 2 high-end wide receivers, Irv Smith Jr.'s name is at least third and maybe even fourth on the pecking order in Minnesota. So I think there's a lot of dynasty managers that are like me that are thinking now is the time to buy into Irv Smith Jr. before his value rises, because that could happen as soon as this preseason, maybe week 1 or week 2 of the regular season, Ryan. Irv Smith Jr. is a guy that so many of us are investing in, and we're really not that sure about him despite the confidence that we try to have with him.
Yeah, this was a tough one for me because, like you said, he has been kind of a favorite. He's been that player we expect to break out, and we've seen flashes. I mean, over his past 2 years, he has slowly chipped away at Kyle Rudolph's production and really his role and workload overall. So those feel like positives. Once you factor in that Rudolph's not on this team anymore, but the Vikings use 2 tight end sets so often. So while Smith might be the 1A, I think Tyler Conklin is probably the 1B, and it's not like Smith is suddenly going to get all of his numbers plus Rudolph's. That's not going to happen. And then I also think about the idea that Matt likes to share so often, which is a good one, that it's not a knock, Matt, that a tight end to really be a difference maker in fantasy needs to be a top 2 option. And Adam Thielen is definitely slowing down, but he's not done yet. Irv Smith is not going to be the second option on this team in 2021, barring a bad injury for one of those top wide receivers. So I still like Irv Smith. The price, like you said, 11th round. He was one of the guys we featured last week's show. Is not detrimental yet. It's not too scary, but as his value continues to grow, it could reach that point. Because of that 11th round, I'm still in, but I'm not looking at him as a slam dunk.
Yeah, I'm in the same area. And I mean, his price has actually fallen a little bit from a couple of months ago by about 30 picks, a little bit less than 3 rounds or so. So I think the hype was, and then we got the Tyler Conklin news. I think people started to realize, he's still not going to be a top option in that offense. I think he's going to need to have a high touchdown output to really pay off his current price tag. But I mean, so is everybody else in that range, right? There's a couple of guys I think I could look at and say that I would maybe have rather over Irv Smith in that tight end, and basically end of the tight end 1 range, early tight end 2. I would rather have Tyler Higbee than him, who's going about a round later. I would probably rather have Jonnu Smith than him, who's probably going to be the top option in that option and that offense. We don't know what that's really worth yet if we're counting on what we got last year from the New England offense. But there are guys after him that I would assume rather have those guys, not necessarily rather have them, but considering the price, if I can wait a couple more rounds, pick up another wide receiver or 2 in that range as some depth and still get somebody a high upside tight end a little bit later, then that's probably something I'm going to do. I think the problem with it, if you already have him is, I guess you could sell him for a 2nd round pick, but I don't know what the real point of that is, because anybody you get in that range is going to cost about the same. You're probably not getting a 1st round pick. If you are, I'm taking that absolutely. But he's a player that I really like, and he's only 22 years old. He's actually the same age as Pat Freiermuth, who's coming in as a rookie this year. So I think there's still. I think he's probably going to drop in value a little bit, and maybe you can get a little bit of a discount if you wait maybe a year or 2.
Yeah, that 2nd round price tag, we've seen that a few times in the last couple of weeks. I was just looking at the Trade Finder guys, and you got to always take these trades with a grain of salt. In the last 10 or 12 days, twice in single quarterback leagues, he's been traded for a mid-2nd round pick in upcoming drafts here just that haven't drafted rookies just yet. And then twice in the last 10 days, guys, for a 2023 1st round pick.
Wow, I'm taking the first. 100%.
That shows that people are all over the place when it comes to Irv Smith. There's a lot of people expecting that breakout. Also in Superflex League, 2 trades to mention, one straight up for Taysom Hill. That's intriguing for sure, right? If you if you want to get your hands on a tight end with some upside, Taysom Hill isn't a high price to pay. And then one straight up for Rondale Moore. So you're all over the place when it comes to if you're giving up Rondale Moore, no matter what the settings are, you are expecting a top 6 or 7 production from Irv Smith Jr. At least it seems that way to me. Let's move on to the next guy on the list before we take a quick break. Ryan, is there somebody else we want to highlight here?
Yeah, I'm a little worried about Brandon Aiyuk. And he seems to be one of those darlings of the Dynasty community this offseason. I get it. I was so impressed by his rookie season last year. But I really think that came in large part because he was the top option for the 49ers. Deebo Samuel missed 9 games. George Kittle missed 8 games. Essentially, he was the kind of the last man standing. And unless we're assuming that those 2 players specifically are going to miss a lot more time, maybe that's a safe assumption with Deebo. But and unless we're assuming those guys are going to be out of the lineup again, I don't know that we can expect Aiyuk to pay off that wide receiver 2 price tag where he's currently being drafted.
Matt, what are your thoughts with Aiyuk? Are you thinking he qualifies as this high risk, high reward type player, or are you on one side or the other?
I don't have any Aiyuk, and I'm probably not going to buy any for the reasons that Ryan said. I like the player just fine. I just don't trust that offense to really feature anyone, and that goes to another guy on my list going forward. I just don't know, like because how much we like Trey Lance, right? I think it's all kind of comes back to him and where are the targets going to go, and how many times is Trey Lance going to run the ball, right? So I don't know. That whole offense is really confusing to me. I think if you can pick the right guy, there's profit to be made. But for me, at the cost of Aiyuk, you're not getting him for less than like a mid first round pick. If you're still doing rookie drafts this season, I don't think you're gonna get to pay much less than that for him. And with the uncertainty with the offense, both in terms of the the number of targets and the new quarterback coming in and how that offense is going to run through that new young quarterback, it's just too much for me to pay that kind of expensive mid first price, I think, at this point.
Yeah, the price tag is a little bit high, right?
I'd rather have Deebo. He's a similar player. Obviously, I don't think as polished as Aiyuk, but he's going to play a similar role, right? He's going to play that yak role. So and he's way cheaper.
Yeah, Deebo's down at wide receiver 39. Matt, you talked about it with Trey Lance there. Of course, we all three really like Trey Lance quite a bit. We've talked about him a lot on this show over the past couple of months. We love that offense and what the coaching staff can do there. So yeah, that's an offense that we want pieces of, but the Aiyuk price tag, I think, has just gotten out of control. He's wide receiver 19 right now. He's above T. Higgins, Chase Claypool, Jerry Jeudy, Deontay Johnson, some reliable guys like Robert Woods. I just think it's a little too high. And I don't know that he's going to pay that off.
It's almost like if you don't think he's going to be able to finish as a wide receiver 1 and that a top 12 wide receiver from a season long output, like it just doesn't seem to like it makes much sense to invest in that right now. I think he's more likely to decrease in value than he is to increase in value.
I think that's probably fair to say. And the main part about it is, on top of all that, there's the other weapons that are already in place in San Francisco. There's the fact that one of those weapons are almost a carbon copy or a cookie cutter image of what Aiyuk does at his best. So, my didn't graduate college brain kind of tells me that if there's 2 that are sharing one role, that's probably not good for either one of them, unless one of them are off the field. And if we're taking one of them off the field, that probably means that there's a chance that it's Aiyuk. So I'm with you guys. I think it's a little bit more risk than reward when you consider the price. I really feel like if you're going to invest in that offense, and there are certainly places that you can do it, I'd just rather invest somewhere else other than in a spot where there's 2 players that have to carve out their role and there's only one to give out.
Yeah, and I don't I feel like I brushed over the pros with Aiyuk. I mean, these players are showing up on this episode today because we really could see it going either way. And obviously, I mean, Aiyuk did step up as the wide receiver one. We've seen players over the years who have that opportunity and didn't capitalize on it. You know, Cortland Sutton comes to mind. Injuries in front of him as a rookie gave him the opportunity to be the wide receiver one, and he didn't really do much with it. So I don't want to skip over that. Aiyuk took advantage of it. He put up huge numbers when Kittle and Debo were out of the lineup. Obviously, he's young. He's 23 years old still. He's got the draft capital. He's in an offense we love. We think they upgraded at quarterback. So there's plenty of reasons to be on board. If I drafted him with the 203 last year, I'm very happy with what I've got. He's not a player I'm scared of. I just think the price is a little too high.
Yeah, if we're investing, we're not really in love with paying that price. If you, like you said, if you got him in the second round last year, though, you're just fine holding on to him.
Oh yeah,
and plugging him into your lineup. Really, that kind of leads to Matt's next choice for a high risk, high reward player. But before we get to that, we should mention, guys, I'm thrilled once again this year. DLF, we are partnering up with Monkey Knife Fight, my favorite DFS site out there. Daily fantasy sports for everybody. Their new slogan, daily fantasy sports for the rest of us. So even if you've played those DFS games in the past, your Monkey Knife Fight experience is going to be so much different. No more competing against professional players or working through all those salary caps and things like that. With Monkey Knife Fight, you're going to choose from these unique games that they feature, the easy to play games, including that super popular more or less contest. I play them all the time. They simply tell you a statistic that they think is the median for a player. Really, you're picking over or under, more or less yards, more or less touchdowns, whatever it might be, and you pick higher or lower. And if you predict it correctly, you're going to win. You're going to win real money and real fast. You can also play other major sports as well as golf, UFC, NASCAR, and more. Sign up for a new account with Monkey Knife Fight with a first-time deposit, and you're going to receive, get this, guys, a free year of DLF Premium. We all love DLF. We visit regularly. How about we get it for free just for putting a few bucks into Monkey Knife Fight and trying something new? On top of it, guys, they're going to match that Monkey Knife Fight deposit. So if you put $10 in there, you're going to get a free $10 to play with. That sounds like so much fun. All you got to do is put in the promo code DLF. That's it. Your DLF subscription is going to be active within 36 hours. It can also, guys, if you're already a subscriber, we're just going to tack on that extra year. So go log into dynastyleaguefootball.com, click on the image for Monkey Knife Fight, follow the instructions. It's that easy. You get free money, you get to play a fun game, and you get more DLF for free. Go check out Monkey Knife Fight right now. Matt, we teased it. He mentioned Aiyuk. Is there another 49er that you're concerned about?
Yeah, it's George Kittle, and I think concern is maybe too high. It may be too strong of a word, but it's much of the same reasons we talked about with Aiyuk when George Kittle broke out a couple of years ago. I mean, the quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo and CJ Beathard, Nick Mullins, those guys were throwing the ball, and they had no one else to throw the ball to. They had Kittle, and they had Dante Pettis, they had Marquise Goodwin, they had Trent Taylor, Dante Pettis, Kendrick Bourne, Richie James. You know, some of these guys we still like, but these are not targets that are going to take any volume away from George Kittle. Now we have Deebo Samuels, and Kittle did produce pretty well with Deebo, but remember Deebo was hurt a decent amount that his rookie season as well, I believe. So now they have three good targets there. They have a quarterback that might be running more than maybe not running more than he's throwing, but running a larger percentage of the time than past quarterbacks that Kittle has played with. We have a new back with Trey Sermon that's there, and is a decent pass catcher as well. So I just think that the number of quality targets that has risen, and I don't necessarily like to make the too many mouths to feed argument, but with a rookie quarterback, he's going to lock onto one guy. Maybe it's Kittle, maybe it's not. And I just think based on his price at tight end 2, I think right now overall behind Kelsey, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but I'd just rather have other guys in that range if I want to. I mean, really, I want Kyle Pitts. We all know that, but I might even just for if I had a 2-season outlook on my team, if I was a contender, I would still probably rather have Kelsey. I would probably rather have Waller at this point, just because he is the de facto one in that offense. I don't think anyone's going to take targets away from Darren Waller. So it's really, again, just a matter of price and the players that are going around with him, and then his situation. While it has been upgraded in terms of surrounding cast, I just don't know if the volume is necessarily still going to be as high as it has been in previous seasons. And then he's also we know he's had an injury bug. He's had one complete season in his career so far. So that's another thing in the background. So I still like Kittle. I still like the player. I think he's going to be plenty productive. He's obviously going to be a top half tight end one, unless he gets hurt again. I just would rather have players around him. So that's where really the risk comes from me, is missing out on another player that is just as good and is maybe in a little bit better of a situation.
Yeah, so Kittle is actually down at tight end 4 in our ADP right now.
Maybe I don't feel the same.
We've seen those guys, those top 4, move around in different orders throughout the offseason. So he could definitely be back up to 2, or maybe even tight end 1 in the next few weeks. That wouldn't be a surprise. I'm with you, and we've talked about it on here as we've done mock drafts, or as we've looked through early round ADP, and we all pretty much agree that Kelsey and Kittle are just not going to be targets for us for different reasons in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round of startup drafts.
I'm wondering, guys, is Kittle in that range where we're thinking about trying to move down the tight end rankings just a little bit if we can't make the Pitts deal and move up and things like that? Are we trying to move down to the Noah Fant, TJ Hawkinson, and get a little bit on top right now? Isn't that the play when it comes to Kittle, if you got him on your roster and you're concerned about that risk?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I actually forgot to add it during when I was talking about him. Was I think I might rather have Hawkinson at this point. So if I can make a move down to Hawkinson, because I think he's going to be the number 1 target in that offense, and I don't think we can necessarily say that for Kittle. I think if you had to bet, the odds are probably that he is going to be the top option. But I think it's a certainty that Hawkinson is going to be that. So if I can pick up a pick or something, another prospect on top of that, I'm happy to make that move right now.
We should, just like you did, Ryan, with Aiyuk, we can't just glaze over the upside when it comes to Kittle, because he has shown that he's one of those freaks that can run that seam and make big plays and win you weeks. And we certainly want to recognize that. He's the kind of guy that we feel really good about putting in our tight end 1 spot in our lineup every single week if we have him on our roster. As long as he's healthy, which is a concern. So Kittle is an excellent one to bring up here. I'm going to keep the theme going at tight end. I'm going to jump over to the New Orleans Saints, guys. Let's talk a little bit about Adam Trautman, a second-year guy who we all were okay investing in. I think it's fair to say probably last year. Hold on to him for a year as Jared Cook played that role in New Orleans. And there's plenty of us in the Dynasty space right now saying Trautman's a candidate to take off, to jump into a big role, big pass-catching role in that offense, despite Drew Brees moving on into retirement. Trautman, I mentioned Irv Smith earlier at tight end 13. Trautman just a couple spots behind him, both among tight ends at tight end 15 and also in the overall at 133 overall. So another guy that we're in that 10, 11, 12th round. We're thinking about the tight end, and he presents that upside. I think we talked about him last week or the week before as a guy that if you already got that veteran on your roster or planning on getting that veteran in a startup, Trautman's the kind of guy that we like to pair with him. Now, paired with this news over the weekend of Michael Thomas. He had the surgery that we've all heard of. It's going to linger into the season, most likely, and Thomas will miss time. So, Matt, Trautman might qualify now as one of those guys that's at the top of the pecking order when it comes to pass catching, as long as he has a nice camp and all the vibes are good coming out of New Orleans. Trautman might be one of these guys with that big-time reward going into 2021.
Yeah, I'm probably buying buying all of the I guess hype that's going to come Troutman's way, just because again he's going to be one of the top 2 options at worst, I think, while Michael Thomas is out. But he is a second-year player. He's from a small school. He's athletic and all that. But we also have a questionable quarterback situation. So there's definitely a way that this could not work out for Trautman. But I think right around that Irv Smith range where he I think is going right now. That's going to change. I think he's probably jumping up into the top 10, right? But I don't know. I think I'm still in. It is definitely risky because of all of the intangibles and stuff that are going on with that offense right now. But I think I'm willing to pay the price right now.
Yeah, looking at the numbers that we have as of right now, it's an easy yes, right? Versus Cole Kmet or even Irv Smith, knowing what we know now. But Trautman is kind of the tight end version of Darrell Henderson, because based on this most recent news, if you're doing a startup draft today or tomorrow or next week, Troutman's going to be much higher than this, Matt, as you said.
Yeah.
I think we're looking more in that tight end 8, 9. Like it's going to be a decision of Goddard versus Trautman, not Cole Kmet versus Trautman. So that's when the higher risk really comes into play and it becomes a tough decision. At that point, I'm probably staying away. It's a little scary to say that, because he could be the number 1 option on that team. But the questions at quarterback, I've got concerns that this Saints team is just going to fall like off the map completely.
Yeah,
I think
go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just gonna say at like tight end 9, 10, I think I'm still comfortable, but higher than that, I think I'm out at that point. Like I think even right now today, I would if I could do it, I would trade Mike Gesicki straight up for him. I would probably trade Robert Tonyan right up for him.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good with those 2.
Yeah, that was exactly the point I was going to make. Mainly we're excited about the potential opportunity and things like that, but he's a complete unknown. He's a small school prospect, didn't really get a lot of run last year. In fact, caught just 15 passes on the season and wasn't on the field all that much. So, when it comes to Trautman, and I was one of those guys that liked him coming into the draft, and the draft capital was just fine as well. I'm just concerned that if his price tag gets as high as you were mentioning there, Ryan, which I think is certainly plausible and could happen, I'd probably be out at that price as well. We're all in this startup auction that you mentioned in the lead there, Matt, and he'll be an interesting guy to watch to see how he plays out, how people want to spend their money when it comes to Trautman in an offense that needs another pass catcher and could use an infusion of youth for sure. We'll see if he grabs the reins of that. We'll see what the news says throughout the offseason. Let's try to fit one more in, Matt. Do you have another name that's been in the news recently that maybe could be considered a high-risk, high-reward player?
Yeah, I think we talked about him a week or 2 ago, but Deshaun Watson, to me, obviously it's a little bit different than Jalen Hurts' situation and his risk, but I think he's the ultimate like boom bust risk, high reward player. He could never play another snap in the NFL. Or he could be the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, I guess, right? And he's a threat to finish as the quarterback 1 in any season. So I know the risk, the floor for Watson is absolutely 0, but I think at quarterback 14 prices in Superflex leagues, and in the 4th round in that range, depending on how I've built my team through the first 3 rounds, he's someone I'm absolutely willing to take a risk on at this point. I think I would still even. It would have to be the exact right team in the right situation, but I think I would even be willing to still pay like a late 1st round pick for Watson at this point, if that's something that you can pull off. An early 2nd, that's like an auto accept for pretty much any team, I think, of mine. But you can't. You guys all know the story. We don't need to rehash this. It's just he has a quarterback 1 upside, or he has a floor of being out of the league.
Yeah, that's ultimate boom and bust, right? Yeah. We're talking about the ideal guy when it comes to this type of episode. If you're talking about names, I made my case for wanting to stay away from Watson pretty clear a couple of weeks ago. I'm a little bit more risk averse when it comes to these off the field things. But the more I've thought about it over the last couple of weeks, and especially in the last few hours since I knew we were going to talk about Deshaun Watson, the more I feel like there needs to be a clear line where you're willing to pay. You're saying if you can give up a second round pick for Deshaun Watson, you're absolutely doing it. My price is probably a little bit lower than that. But at the same time, I recognize that upside that you mentioned, that quarterback one overall type of upside when it's tied to the rushing upside and the big play upside and all those things. Even in a bad situation back in Houston, if that happens to be what happens here, that feels like you need to place a value on that player. You have to have a spot in the pecking order that you're willing to spend to add him to your roster. I need to do some more thinking on that. Your second round price tag, that feels like, for a player with that kind of upside, you should be willing to pay that price. So maybe I need to come off my firm stance that I was probably staying away from Watson.
Yeah, he's another one for me that I think I said it when we talked about him a little while ago, that I just see a major difference in startup draft versus trade value. The trade value is way down. I'm with Matt. I would give any second rounder for him in a super flex league easily, not even a question. But in a startup draft, to take him over some of these established quarterbacks as well as some of the young up-and-coming quarterbacks. I mean, Tua, Zach Wilson are guys being drafted behind him according to our ADP. I would not take him there. So I see a little bit of a disconnect between his current trade value and his current ADP.
I think we ran out of time, guys. We covered as many players as we could. All really good examples of risky guys to add to your roster that offer that big time upside and the potential high reward that we're looking for when it comes to the trade market, or even some of these guys in a startup auction or startup draft. Any takeaways from this exercise, Ryan? Anything that you come away thinking, oh, I hadn't thought about that before. I need to consider that in the future or even right now?
Just another thing that we talked about before we started recording. One thing I like to do really early in the offseason, as early as I can, is basically come up with a general take on every relevant player in Dynasty. And sometimes as generic as I think he's a buy or a sell, or, I'm drafting him or staying away, whatever. And these are the players. These are some of the players that have been the toughest decisions throughout this offseason. And honestly, I'm still not really there. I'm still not sure what I would do. And I guess when you're not sure, most often you end up staying away.
Yeah, well, then you bring it to your buddies and start to talk to them and hope they can clear it up. And we apparently didn't do a good enough job for you on those ones, Ryan. So I apologize for that.
And then you do a podcast about it.
Yeah. How about you, Matt? Anything for you?
I think, like Ryan said, just have clarity on how you feel about these guys. Take a stance one way or the other. And if your stance is that that you don't know, then I think you have to boil it down to the price that you are willing. You're comfortable paying for them. I think that's really the ultimate goal when you're considering players like this is, if you like that player, cool, but do you like the current price? Do you like the players that are going, just after him or right around him? Could you offload some of that risk by moving in a different direction for a player you like equally for either the same price or even cheaper? And then just know yourself. Like, are you a risk averse player like Dan? Are you somebody that if you take a player like Deshaun Watson and he goes in the fourth round and he goes to 0, are you going to be okay with that? Like me, we have to remember this is a long-term game, so that even if you make a mistake on a player like this, even if you have a player that you absolutely love and are willing to take him at any price, like Kyle Pitts, for example, and you fall on your face, you either have to you have to know that you're going to be okay with that, or you're going to know that you're going to take it hard and just have a miserable season. So know yourself, know your own personality, and that's kind of how I play this game. Is it's like an extension of how I feel about life and myself in general. And some things I like to take risks on, and some things I don't. And in a game like this that I love to play and I love to win in, and if I don't finish first, I don't really care what place I finish in. Then take that risk. But if not, then maybe stay away.
Yeah, well said. I like that a lot. I'm coming around for sure. I like to take risk for sure as well. I just hate the unknowns. I think there's so many things that we don't know with that off the field stuff that I tend to stay away. I like to take my risk with players that have been on the field, are going to be on the field, and I've seen with my own eyes. I think the big takeaway for me, guys, from this episode, we're back together with Monkey Knife Fight. So all fall, all winter, when I'm staring at those Monkey Knife Fight rosters and stuff like that, I can say the reason is because I'm doing it for the pod, So that's going to do it for this episode of the DLF Dynasty podcast. I appreciate all of you guys for listening, and we'll catch you again next week.